The morning sun cast long shadows across mission control as Captain Sarah Chen stared at the massive holographic display. 3 objects had just appeared in high Earth orbit, defying every known law of physics. Their crystalline hulls reflected sunlight like artificial stars, each vessel easily dwarfing the International Space Station. Multiple contacts, size estimate approximately 3 kilometers each, Lieutenant Park announced, his voice steady despite the tension. No detectable engine signatures. They just appeared. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, bringing up thermal readings. The vessels showed no heat bloom, no radiation signature, nothing that would indicate conventional propulsion. Get me a line to the Joint Chiefs. And someone wake up Dr. Harrison at the Arecibo facility. Before she could complete the call, every screen in mission control flickered. A face materialized, if you could call it that. The being had 4 pairs of compound eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, with metallic-looking mandibles that clicked rhythmically as it spoke. People of Earth, the creature's voice emerged in perfect English, though its mandibles moved in patterns that couldn't possibly form human words. I am 6-star Commander Vex of the Zoraxian Confederation. Your world has been selected for evaluation and potential integration into our society. Sarah noticed the subtle condescension in its tone, like an adult addressing a particularly slow child. The alien's compound eyes shifted, taking in the various humans now visible on their screens. We have monitored your development for some time, Vex continued. Your transition from primitive combustion weapons to energy-based defense systems is progressing, albeit slowly. We will assist in accelerating this process. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session within the hour. Sarah found herself transported there through some means she couldn't comprehend. One moment in Houston, the next in New York. Commander Vex materialized in the center of the chamber, his crystalline environment suit catching the light. Your current military capabilities are... Vex paused, mandibles clicking in what Sarah recognized as amusement. Quaint. These projectile weapons your guards carry, for instance. He gestured at the Secret Service agents. Most civilized species abandoned such devices millennia ago. To demonstrate, Vex produced a small sphere that floated beside him. It projected a barrier of shimmering energy. Our most basic defensive technology. It renders energy weapons harmless and can withstand impacts far beyond your most advanced missiles. The delegates murmured among themselves as Vex continued his presentation. But Sarah noticed something odd. The alien commander kept a careful distance from the human security personnel, particularly those carrying standard firearms. His compound eyes would dart to their weapons occasionally, almost nervously. We will begin by replacing your primitive armaments with proper energy-based systems, Vex announced. Resistance would be unfortunate, though your current weapons pose no threat to our technology. As the alien spoke, Sarah caught a subtle detail. The environmental suit's energy field fluctuated whenever it moved near metal objects. The pattern seemed familiar somehow, like ripples in a pond avoiding a particular frequency. She made a note on her tablet, careful to keep her movements subtle. The Zoraxian ships maintained high orbit instead of taking more advantageous positions. Their demonstrations focused entirely on energy weapons, and despite their supposed superiority, they seemed oddly concerned about Earth's primitive armaments. We will receive your formal surrender in 3 of your Earth days, Vex concluded. Prepare your military leaders and heads of state. The Zoraxian Confederation welcomes you to a more civilized age. As the alien commander dematerialized, Sarah locked eyes with General Martinez across the chamber. His slight nod confirmed her suspicions. The Zoraxians were hiding something, and it had everything to do with their dismissal of human weapons technology. The question was, what made such an advanced species so nervous about simple gunpowder and lead? Outside the UN building, the 3 alien ships hung in the sky like ethereal diamonds, their presence a constant reminder of humanity's apparent technological inferiority. But Sarah Chen had learned long ago that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, and she intended to test that theory very soon. The Geneva Convention Center buzzed with nervous energy as Dr. James Corey adjusted the settings on his portable scanner. 3 days had passed since first contact, and the Zoraxians had insisted on demonstrating their technological supremacy before Earth's assembled military leaders. "The energy readings make no sense," James muttered, comparing the data streams with his colleague, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. "Their shields operate on principles we've never seen, but there's something familiar about the underlying pattern." Commander Vex strode into the conference hall, flanked by 2 smaller Zoraxians in matching crystalline suits. The alien delegation moved with practiced grace, their environmental fields casting prismatic patterns across the polished floor. Behind them floated an array of demonstration drones, each one gleaming like a perfect diamond. "Today, we will show you true defensive capabilities," Vex announced, his mandibles moving in what they'd learned was a gesture of pride. "Observe as our basic shield technology renders your most advanced weapons obsolete." Lieutenant Maria Santos, standing guard near the back of the hall, watched intently as the Zoraxians began their demonstration. Her hand rested near her sidearm, a habit from years of security detail work. Something about the aliens' behavior had been nagging at her military instincts. The first drone moved forward, generating a bubble of iridescent energy. Vex activated a handheld device, and a bolt of plasma struck the shield. The energy dissipated harmlessly, drawing appreciative murmurs from the assembled dignitaries. "Now witness the futility of your current armaments," Vex declared. A second drone projected an image of Earth's various weapon systems. "These chemical-propelled projectiles are centuries behind acceptable standards. Even your most powerful kinetic weapons cannot hope to breach our defensive fields." James frowned at his readings. "That's odd," he whispered to Yuki. "The shield's energy signature changes completely when they mention ballistic weapons, almost like—" His thoughts were interrupted as Lieutenant Santos stepped forward. "Commander Vex, would you be willing to demonstrate the shield's effectiveness against one of our primitive weapons? For comparison purposes." The alien's compound eyes shifted rapidly, mandibles clicking in what seemed like agitation. "Such a demonstration would be unnecessary. We have already proven our superiority with energy-based systems." "With respect," Santos pressed, "seeing is believing for humans. One simple test would convince many skeptics." The gathered military leaders murmured in agreement. James noticed Vex's environmental suit flickering slightly, its field becoming more pronounced near the armed security personnel. "Very well," Vex conceded after consulting with his associates. "We will permit one demonstration, though I must insist on strict safety protocols." The Zoraxians positioned their drone at the far end of the hall, its shield glowing brightly. They retreated to what they claimed was a safe distance, though James noticed they moved well beyond the designated safety zone. Lieutenant Santos drew her service pistol, following all proper protocols. The room fell silent as she aimed at the drone. James kept his eyes fixed on his scanner, ready to record every detail. The shot rang out, sharp and sudden in the quiet hall. What happened next would change the course of human history. The bullet passed straight through the Zoraxian shield as if it wasn't there, striking the drone and sending it spinning to the floor in a shower of crystalline fragments. Chaos erupted in the conference hall. The Zoraxian delegation moved with unprecedented speed toward their transport zone, their previously graceful movements forgotten in their haste to retreat. Commander Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly in what anyone could now recognize as panic. "Dr. Corey," Lieutenant Santos called out, "please tell me you got readings on that." James stared at his scanner in disbelief. The data was clear, but its implications were staggering. The Zoraxian shields, so effective against energy weapons, had no defense against simple kinetic projectiles. "I think," he said slowly, looking at the scattered remains of the drone, "we just discovered why they were so eager to take away our primitive weapons." Above Geneva, the 3 Zoraxian ships suddenly shifted position, moving to a higher orbit. Their crystalline hulls no longer seemed impressive. They looked fragile, like expensive glass sculptures hanging in Earth's sky. The diplomatic dance was over. Now the real negotiations would begin. The Moscow Military Museum stood silent in the early morning light, its marble halls filled with the echoes of history. Viktor Petrov, the museum's curator for 40 years, walked through his daily routine of checking the exhibits. His weathered hands lingered on a particular glass case containing a pristine Mosin Nagant rifle from 1943. Still beautiful after all these years, he murmured in Russian, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The museum would host a special demonstration today. The Zaraxians had insisted on showcasing their technology in places of obsolete military significance. Dr. James Corey arrived early, his scanning equipment concealed within what appeared to be ordinary camera gear. The Geneva incident had been quickly classified, but word had spread through scientific channels. He nodded to Victor, whom he briefed privately the day before. "The rifle is ready," James whispered as they walked through the World War II exhibition. Victor patted his jacket pocket, where a single cartridge rested. "My father carried this rifle through Stalingrad. One bullet remained in his collection, never fired, carefully preserved." Commander Vex materialized in the main hall at precisely 900 hours, accompanied by a delegation of Earth's military leaders and scientists. His crystalline suit sparkled under the museum lights, but his mandibles twitched nervously at the sight of the historical weapons surrounding them. "This docility," Vex announced, his translated voice echoing off the high ceiling, "represents the primitive warfare techniques we will help humanity transcend. Today's demonstration will prove conclusively that such artifacts belong only in museums." A dozen floating drones emerged from behind him, more advanced than the one destroyed in Geneva. They arranged themselves in a complex geometric pattern, their shields creating an interlocking network of energy fields. "We have improved our barriers since the incident in Switzerland," Vex declared. "These new shields are absolutely impenetrable to all forms of attack, including your outdated kinetic weapons." Victor watched quietly from his position near the World War II exhibit as the aliens began their demonstration. Energy weapons flashed harmlessly against the drone shields, drawing appreciative murmurs from the crowd. James positioned himself carefully, his scanners disguised as regular recording equipment. "Now," Vex continued, mandibles clicking in restored confidence, "would anyone care to test our enhanced defenses?" The room fell silent. The Geneva incident had been suppressed, but rumors had spread. No one wanted to risk another diplomatic incident. No one, except a certain museum curator with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Victor stepped forward, his movement drawing all eyes. "With respect, Commander," he said in carefully practiced English, "I have maintained this museum for 40 years. Perhaps a historical demonstration would be appropriate." Before anyone could object, he reached into the display case, left deliberately unlocked that morning, and withdrew the Mosin Nagant. With practiced ease born from decades of handling historical weapons, he loaded the single cartridge. Mr. Petrov, one of the Earth diplomats, started to protest, but fell silent as Victor smoothly shouldered the rifle. The Zoraxian drone shields brightened, their pattern shifting to what Vex claimed was maximum power. "Your antique cannot possibly," the alien commander began. The shot cracked through the museum like a thunderbolt. The nearest drone's shield flared brilliant blue for a split second, then vanished. The drone itself split perfectly in half, its crystalline components scattering across the marble floor. Victor lowered the rifle calmly, the smell of gunpowder drifting through the air. As we say in Russia, sometimes old ways are best ways. Vex's compound eyes darted between the destroyed drone and the elderly curator. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what everyone now recognized as barely contained panic. Without another word, the alien commander and his remaining drones vanished in a flash of transport energy. James rushed forward with his scanning equipment, grinning broadly. "Perfect shot, Mr. Petrov. And perfect data, too." Their new shields were just as vulnerable as the old ones. Victor carefully returned the rifle to its display case, patting it gently, My father always said, simplest solution is usually best solution. He smiled at the assembled crowd. Perhaps now our alien friends will learn this lesson too. Above Moscow, the Zoraxian ships began moving to an even higher orbit, their crystalline hulls catching the morning sun like distant, frightened stars. Aboard the Zoraxian flagship Crystalline Dawn, First Science Director Zach stared at the simulation results scrolling across the quantum displays. His assistant, Third Engineer Ven, inputted another set of calculations, mandibles trembling as each new scenario produced the same devastating conclusion. Impossible, Zax muttered, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the red warning indicators flashing throughout the laboratory. Run the ballistics simulation again. Factor in shield harmonics at maximum frequency. The holographic display showed a simple lead projectile passing through their most advanced shields, as if they were nothing more than aesthetic light shows. Dozens of similar simulations ran simultaneously, testing various shield configurations against what the Zoraxians had dismissed as primitive projectile weapons. First Director, Ven's translated voice carried unmistakable tension. The humans possess approximately 12 billion such kinetic weapons, ranging from small personal devices to large vehicle-mounted launchers. Our database indicates they have been perfecting these technologies for over 600 years. Commander Vex burst into the laboratory, his usually pristine environmental suit showing signs of hasty adjustment. Please tell me you have found a solution, First Director. The Human Security Council convenes in 6 hours, and they will demand answers. Zax gestured at the displays with all 4 of his primary appendages. The fundamental problem lies in our shield design philosophy. For 10,000 years, we have focused exclusively on deflecting energy-based attacks. Our entire defensive doctrine assumes enemies will use plasma, particle beams, or antimatter weapons. The simulation showed another failure as a simple brass-jacketed bullet penetrated their strongest shields. The projected casualty rates made Vex's mandibles click in distress. How did we miss this? Vex demanded, his compound eyes reflecting the endless stream of failed defensive scenarios. We monitored their civilization for decades. Ven brought up historical records on a secondary display. We observed their military development through the lens of our own technological progression. When we saw them experimenting with energy weapons, we assumed they were abandoning projectile technology, following the same path as every other species we've encountered. Instead, Zax concluded, they were simply adding to their arsenal rather than replacing it. A tactical diversity we never considered possible. The laboratory's quantum computer processed another 1,000,000 simulations. Each one showed the same vulnerability. Their shields, designed to disperse energy along crystalline matrices, had no effect on solid objects moving at high velocity. The very principles that made their defenses so effective against energy weapons left them completely exposed to kinetic attacks. An alert chimed through the ship. Surface scanning showed increased activity at multiple human military installations. Weapons that the Zoraxians had dismissed as obsolete were being moved into position. Massive naval guns, artillery pieces, and missile systems that, while crude by Confederation standards, were suddenly terrifying in their implications. The humans are not primitive, Zax said quietly, studying the mounting evidence of their miscalculation. They are pragmatic. They kept what worked while developing new technologies. We, in our arrogance, abandoned proven methods in pursuit of what we considered advancement. Commander Vex paced the laboratory, his crystalline armor clicking against the deck. Can we develop a defense? Something to counter these kinetic weapons. Zax brought up the development timelines. Our entire civilization is built around energy manipulation. To create effective kinetic barriers would require a fundamental redesign of our technology. The humans have spent centuries perfecting their ballistic weapons. We would need at least that long to develop comparable defenses. And we have 6 hours until their Security Council meets, Vex said grimly. A new alert flashed across the displays. Human naval vessels were moving into position around their major ports. Ancient battleships, recently consigned to museums, were being rapidly readied for service. Their huge guns, capable of hurling massive shells into high orbit, represented a threat the Zoraxian fleet had no defense against. "Send word to the Confederation," Commander Vex ordered, his voice heavy with resignation. "Advise them to reconsider their expansion policy regarding Earth, and prepare our diplomatic protocols." He turned to leave the laboratory, then paused, "and delete any reference to human weapons as primitive from our databases. We can no longer afford such dangerous assumptions." Above Earth, the crystalline ships began positioning themselves for emergency transit. They had come to demonstrate superiority, but had instead learned a costly lesson in humility. The U.S. Constitution, America's oldest commissioned warship, glided silently through Boston Harbor at dawn. Captain Rebecca Hayes stood on her deck, watching as modern targeting computers were carefully integrated into the ancient vessel's infrastructure. The sight of work crews swarming over the historic frigate would have seemed bizarre just a week ago. "Main mast integration complete, Captain," Lieutenant Commander Chen reported, tablet in hand. The old girls now linked to the tactical network. "Who would have thought a ship from 1797 would be our secret weapon?" Rebecca smiled, running her hand along the weathered oak railing. "Sometimes the old ways work best. How are the other restorations proceeding?" Around the world, similar scenes unfolded. In Russia, engineering teams worked around the clock to restore railway artillery pieces, their massive guns perfectly suited for high-angle orbital bombardment. The British Royal Navy recommissioned vessels, long relegated to ceremonial duties, their guns being upgraded with modern fire control systems. At Pearl Harbor, the mighty U.S. Missouri underwent rapid reactivation. Her 16-inch guns, capable of hurling 2,700-pound shells into the stratosphere, were being modified with guidance packages developed by NASA. Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez supervised the installation, marveling at how well the old systems adapted to modern improvements. "Those alien shields might stop a laser," he muttered, patting one of the massive gun barrels. "But let's see them handle 2,700 pounds of American steel moving at supersonic speeds." In Geneva, Dr. James Corey presented his findings to the United Earth Defense Council. The holographic displays showed detailed analyses of Zoraxian shield technology, their crystalline weaknesses now glaringly obvious. "Their entire defensive doctrine evolved around energy weapons," James explained, pointing to the simulation. "They never developed protection against kinetic impacts because they considered such weapons obsolete. This gives us an unprecedented advantage." Admiral Sarah Chen, recently promoted to coordinate the global defense effort, stood to address the council. "We've configured a three-tiered response using restored naval artillery, railway guns, and coastal defense batteries. If the Zoraxians want to fight, they'll face weapons their shields were never designed to stop." High above the Earth, the Zoraxian ships maintained their holding pattern, but their confidence was clearly shaken. Their once impressive crystalline hulls now seemed fragile against humanity's resurgent steel warriors. In the Indian Ocean, the INS Vikrant battle group escorted a convoy of preserved World War II destroyers, their guns upgraded and ready. Chinese naval yards worked at full capacity, recommissioning coastal artillery that hadn't seen service in decades. At the British Museum, curator Dr. Elizabeth Montgomery supervised the careful removal of a preserved 18-pound naval gun. From museum piece to active service in a week, she mused, watching as Royal Navy engineers prepared it for installation. History has a way of remaining relevant. The French coastal artillery at Normandy, silent since World War II, underwent rapid modernization. German railway guns, long considered historical curiosities, rolled out of preservation facilities. Every nation contributed what they could to the growing arsenal of upgraded obsolete weapons. In orbit, NASA's Deep Space Tracking Network monitored the Zoraxian fleet's increasingly erratic movements. The alien ships, for all their advanced technology, now faced a threat they had never anticipated: humanity's ability to adapt old solutions to new problems. Captain Hayes watched as the Constitution's final systems came online. The oldest commissioned warship in the world was now among the most modern, her ancient guns guided by satellite targeting and quantum computers. Yet her wooden heart remained unchanged, a testament to the enduring value of proven technology. "All stations report ready," Lieutenant Commander Chen announced. "The global defense network is operational. Every restored gun, every recommissioned ship, they're all linked and coordinated." Rebecca nodded, looking up at the morning sky, where the Zoraxian ships glinted like nervous stars. "Send word to command. The Constitution and her sisters are ready to remind the galaxy why these weapons were never truly obsolete." Across the planet, humanity's restored guardians stood ready, a perfect fusion of historical power and modern precision. The legacy of steel and gunpowder, tempered by centuries of development, prepared to teach the Zoraxians a lesson about underestimating primitive technology. The next move would be theirs. The National Space Defense Command Center hummed with activity as Admiral Sarah Chen studied the holographic display. 20 kilometers above Earth, the Zoraxian fleet had begun a series of complex maneuvers, their crystalline ships catching the sunlight as they shifted positions. "They're trying to find an orbital pattern outside our effective range," Lieutenant Park observed, tracking their movements. "Current altitude suggests they believe our restored weapons can't reach them." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "They're still thinking in terms of traditional naval artillery. Show me the status of Operation Legacy." The display shifted, revealing hundreds of points of light around the globe. Each one represented a restored weapon system, now enhanced with modern technology. Railway guns mounted on magnetic levitation tracks could shift position in minutes. Naval batteries guided by quantum computers could calculate trajectories that would have been impossible a decade ago. Message from the Zoraxian flagship, Communications Officer Rodriguez announced. "They're demanding we cease military preparations, claiming it violates diplomatic protocols." "Send them the same response they gave us last week," Sarah ordered. "Tell them we're simply upgrading our primitive defense systems." In high orbit, the alien vessels continue their elaborate dance, trying to maintain distance from Earth's surface while keeping their weapons within range. Their energy weapons created spectacular light shows in the upper atmosphere, but hit nothing. "Launch Test Package Alpha," Sarah commanded. "Let's show them what these obsolete weapons can do." The U.S. Missouri, stationed in the Pacific, fired a single round from her forward battery. The shell, modified with a NASA-designed guidance system, arced into the sky. Instead of traditional explosives, it carried sensors and tracking devices. "Test package reaching apogee," Lieutenant Park reported. "Trajectory perfect. Impact calculations. Direct hit zone on the smallest Zoraxian vessel." The alien ships immediately scattered, their formation breaking as they realized the implications. The test shell hadn't been meant to hit them. It proved they could be hit. Deep in the Ural Mountains, Russian engineers activated their restored railway artillery network. The massive guns, once thought relegated to history books, traversed smoothly on their magnetic tracks. Chinese coastal batteries, hidden in mountain bunkers, elevated their barrels toward space. "Multiple energy weapon discharges," Rodriguez warned. "They're trying to establish a defensive screen." Sarah watched as brilliant beams of light crisscrossed Earth's upper atmosphere. The Zoraxians were creating a complex network of energy fields, likely hoping to intercept any incoming projectiles. "They still don't understand," Dr. Corey said from his station. "Their shields can't stop physical objects. All they're doing is putting on a light show." The Missouri fired again, this time a full broadside. 6 guided shells streaked upward, their trajectories calculated by quantum computers. The Zoraxian ships broke formation completely, their elegant maneuvers degrading into near panic as they sought to evade the incoming rounds. Message from their commander, Rodriguez reported, trying to hide his amusement. "They're requesting an immediate cessation of weapons testing and offering to discuss terms." Sarah studied the tactical display. The alien ships had retreated to a higher orbit, but Earth's restored weapons could still reach them. More importantly, the Zoraxians knew it. "Send response," she ordered. "Remind them of their own words about primitive weapons and technological superiority. Add that we're willing to demonstrate our full capabilities if they require further convincing." Around the planet, humanity's restored guardians stood ready. The Constitution's ancient guns, now guided by satellite targeting, tracked the alien vessels. Railway artillery in Europe, Asia, and the Americas maintained constant firing solutions. Naval task forces coordinated their fields of fire, creating an interlocking network of coverage that left the Zoraxians nowhere to hide. "They're responding," Rodriguez announced. Message reads, "We request a mutual stand-down of forces and propose immediate diplomatic negotiations." Sarah nodded, watching as the crystalline ships maintained their new respectful distance. "Tell them we accept, on one condition. All future meetings will be conducted with full recognition of Earth's existing military capabilities." The aliens' response came quickly. "Agreed." As the tension in the command center eased slightly, Sarah reflected on how quickly the situation had changed. Humanity's so-called primitive weapons, combined with modern innovation, had accomplished what no amount of advanced technology could. They had earned respect among the stars. The game of orbital chess continued, but now with new rules and mutual understanding. Dawn broke over Pearl Harbor as the U.S. Missouri slipped her moorings. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching the morning sun glint off her freshly painted hull. After weeks of intensive modernization, the mighty battleship was ready for her most important mission since World War II. "All stations report ready," Commander Sarah Wong announced, her hands moving across the modern tactical interface that now complemented the ship's original systems. "Targeting computers online, smart shell guidance synchronized." Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Send word to Allied Command. Operation Checkmate is commencing." High above the Pacific, the Zoraxian flagship Crystalline Dawn maintained its orbital position. First Science Director Zax monitored the humans' preparations with growing concern. Their ships, previously dismissed as floating museums, now represented an unprecedented threat. Multiple surface contacts moving into predetermined positions, Third Engineer Venn reported. The humans are coordinating their forces with remarkable precision. Commander Vex studied the tactical display, his mandibles clicking nervously. Their primitive weapons may be effective, but surely they cannot coordinate a proper orbital attack. The mathematical complexities alone. He froze as new data flowed across the screen. The human vessels were arranging themselves in a complex pattern, their positions calculated to create overlapping fields of fire that accounted for Earth's rotation, orbital mechanics, and even solar wind variations. "How are they managing this level of coordination?" Vex demanded. Back on the Missouri, Marcus received the final confirmation. Fleets worldwide were in position. British destroyers in the Atlantic, Chinese cruisers in the South China Sea, Indian vessels in the Arabian Sea, and restored naval guns along every major coastline. "All units report synchronized targeting solutions," Sarah announced. "Quantum entanglement network is stable. Every gun in the global defense network can fire as one." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Send the warning. Let's give them one last chance to withdraw." The message transmitted to the Zoraxian fleet was simple. Your shields cannot protect you. Withdraw from Earth orbit or face coordinated planetary defense response. Aboard the Crystalline Dawn, Commander Vex received the ultimatum. His compound eyes shifted rapidly between tactical displays, showing hundreds of restored weapons locked onto his fleet. "They're bluffing," he declared, but his mandibles clicked uncertainly. No primitive kinetic weapons could possibly. The Missouri fired first. Her massive 16-inch guns roared in sequence, sending guided shells streaking into the sky. Within seconds, every major fleet and coastal battery on Earth opened fire. Thousands of projectiles, each enhanced with modern guidance systems, arced toward the alien fleet. "Impossible," Vex shouted as his tactical officer displayed the incoming trajectories. "The calculations required to coordinate this kind of attack." They've linked their ancient weapons to quantum computers. Zax interrupted, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the red alert signals. Every gun is firing as part of a single, synchronized system. The Zoraxian ships attempted evasive maneuvers, their energy weapons creating brilliant patterns against the dawn sky. But their shields, designed to stop energy attacks, could do nothing against the approaching storm of steel. The first shell struck the smallest Zoraxian vessel. Its crystalline hull, beautiful but vulnerable, shattered under the impact. The ship didn't explode. It simply broke apart, its pieces scattered across the upper atmosphere like diamond dust. Direct hits confirmed, Sarah reported aboard the Misery. Enemy fleet attempting emergency withdrawal. Marcus watched as the remaining alien ships desperately tried to clear Earth's gravity well. Their once graceful movements were now panicked, uncoordinated. The mighty crystalline Dawn itself took several hits, its hull cracking but holding together. Message from the Zoraxian commander. Communications officer Lee announced. They're surrendering. Full withdrawal from Earth orbit. They're requesting immediate cessation of fire. The order went out through the quantum network. Around the world, the guns fell silent. Thousands of naval personnel watched as the alien fleet retreated, their crystalline ships now bearing scars and fractures from humanity's restored guardians. Send the final message, Marcus ordered. Aboard the limping crystalline Dawn, Commander Vex received the transmission. Next time, don't judge a civilization by the age of its weapons. A Misery's crew cheered as the alien ships disappeared into deep space. Humanity had faced its first interstellar threat and emerged victorious, not through superior technology, but through the combination of proven weapons and innovative thinking. As the sun rose fully over Pearl Harbor, the great battleship stood proud, her guns still warm, a bridge between Earth's past and its stellar future. The United Nations Assembly Hall buzzed with anticipation as representatives from Earth's nations gathered for an unprecedented meeting. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Pearl Harbor, and today marked the first official diplomatic contact with the Zoraxian Confederation since their withdrawal. Admiral Sarah Chen sat beside Dr. James Corey, both now key members of Earth's Interstellar Defense Council. The chamber's holographic displays showed the approaching Zoraxian diplomatic vessel, notably smaller than their previous warships and lacking the crystalline architecture that had proved so vulnerable. They're certainly taking no chances this time, James observed, studying the vessel's design. That hull looks like it's built to withstand kinetic impacts. Commander Vex materialized on the speaker's platform, his environmental suit now reinforced with visible armor plating. His compound eyes surveyed the chamber, settling briefly on the ceremonial honor guard with their primitive rifles. People of Earth, he began, his translated voice carrying a new tone of respect. The Zoraxian Confederation comes seeking not dominance, but partnership. Recent events have challenged our understanding of technological advancement. Sarah noticed how the alien commander no longer clicked his mandibles in that once familiar gesture of superiority. The Battle of Pearl Harbor had taught the Zoraxians an expensive lesson in humility. Our scientists have studied your military doctrine extensively, Vex continued. Your ability to preserve and adapt proven technologies while developing new ones is unique among all species we have encountered. This adaptive philosophy has produced capabilities we never considered possible. The assembly hall's displays showed images from the battle, restored battleships firing in perfect coordination, railway guns launching guided shells into orbit, ancient coastal batteries protecting Earth's shores. Each image represented the marriage of historical engineering with modern innovation. The Confederation proposes a mutual defense treaty, Vex announced. We offer our advanced energy weapons and faster-than-light technology. In exchange, we seek to learn from your unique approach to military development and strategic thinking. Dr. Corey leaned forward as Vex's assistants displayed technical specifications. The Zoraxians were offering remarkable technologies, but they were equally interested in studying Earth's obsolete weapons and tactical doctrines. Furthermore, Vex continued, We bring warnings. Other spacefaring races have observed our withdrawal. Some see Earth as a potential threat, others as a valuable ally. Your demonstration of tactical innovation has attracted significant attention." Sarah smiled slightly. The Zoraxians had arrived expecting to find primitive savages playing with outdated weapons. Instead, they'd discovered a civilization that had mastered the art of combining proven methods with cutting-edge technology. The treaty terms appeared on the chamber's displays. The Zoraxians would help Earth develop defenses against energy weapons, while Earth would assist them in developing kinetic weapon countermeasures. More importantly, both civilizations would share their philosophical approaches to technological development. "We have learned," Vex concluded, his mandibles moving in a new gesture of genuine respect, "that true advancement lies not in abandoning the past, but in building upon it. Earth's primitive weapons, combined with your innovative spirit, have taught us the danger of assuming technological superiority." The Assembly voted overwhelmingly to accept the treaty. As the documents were signed, Sarah watched the honor guard present arms with their ceremonial rifles, weapons that had proven more effective than any alien energy beam. "A new age begins," James commented as the ceremony concluded. "Not one of primitive versus advanced, but of mutual respect and shared knowledge." Outside the UN building, crowds gathered to watch the diplomatic vessel hover above New York. Unlike its predecessors, it maintained a respectful distance from Earth's surface. In harbors worldwide, restored battleships stood proudly alongside modern vessels, their guns ready to defend Earth's interests across the stars. Commander Vex approached Sarah and James privately after the ceremony. "There is an old human saying," he said, his translated voice carrying a hint of irony. "Something about not bringing energy weapons to a gunfight." Sarah laughed. "Close enough, Commander. Welcome to a more interesting galaxy." As the sun set over New York, the Zoraxian ship departed peacefully, its hull reflecting the golden light. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by abandoning its heritage, but by embracing it. The weapons that had once seemed primitive had proven that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. And in orbit, Earth's guardian ships stood watch, their ancient guns now aimed at the stars, ready to remind any future visitors that appearances could be deceiving. The end.